So I had told Pastor Tapp and also gave him evidence of my story, which is basically that in 1996 I was injured by a doctor and I didn't really make any complaint about it. And what happened is, following that, with the subsequent doctors, they were all covering it up. At the same time, they did in fact put the evidence within the records. They just buried the evidence, kind of like a needle in a haystack. Okay, so anyway, so years from then, while I was being treated for some of the symptoms, which were like migraine headaches, some of the migraine meds, they do affect the cardiovascular system. And in 2003, my symptoms transformed and I actually developed some cardiovascular symptoms, which I didn't even recognize them to be cardiovascular symptoms. Okay, so they really weren't bothering me, and the migraines kind of went away because what was really going on was that the blood flow from the heart to the brain was reduced. So it had the positive effect of getting rid of the migraine. So at the same time, I had some newer other symptoms develop. But anyway, I was kind of okay with the status quo, and for like 8 years, basically, I really didn't see a doctor. So, but the doctor definitely gave many indications in the record that, something happened to my cardiovascular system. And so I came, it's down to 2013 in January, I went to a neurologist in Fairfax. Now this is a practice called Innova Alpha Neurology, and it's owned by the big giant Innova. But it really has nothing to do with Adventist Healthcare. It's just that Adventist Healthcare kind of, they're buddies of Innova, and it looks like, I guess, if Adventist Healthcare is buddies of Innova and then TAP is buddies of Adventist Healthcare. So what has happened is, when I'm asking help from Pastor Tapp, he doesn't want to be my buddy. We know who he's the buddy of. He's the buddy of Adventist Healthcare. But I kind of suggested to Pastor Tapp, since he is buddies with Adventist Healthcare, that he gets some help from them. But in fact, Adventist Healthcare is also the buddies of Innova. So I'm like the odd guy out. Anyway, so what happened at Innova, it was a simple neurology office, basically, a doctor's office. So the doctor, the neurologist, now how they work there is basically the head of the practice is really not a good guy, so no one really wants to work for him. So you would think you're going by the Innova name, plus you're in Fairfax, you would think you would get like the best neurologist around, but in fact you actually get the worst. The bottom of the barrel is all he gets, because he has some kind of personality disorder. Nobody wants to work for him. Basically, he's a jerk, so nobody wants to work for him. So yeah, so he gets his bottom of the barrel neurologist, and this neurologist kind of got it half right. She understood that that part of my symptoms were coming because of a head injury, but she didn't understand that the other part was coming because of a cardiovascular condition. And so anyway, she went ahead and ordered a whole bunch of tests, expensive tests, and they were all focused in on the head. She completely ignored the cardiovascular system, but it didn't really cost her at that point. Now, what happened is, one of the tests she ordered was an MRI of the brain, and it required contrast. They put the contrast, they inject the contrast so they can get a better image of your brain. Okay, so that was really not even necessary, but anyway, so I went to another place, a really cheap place in Bethesda called Capital Imaging LLC. So it was just my bad luck that I go to like two really bad places. So this place is basically, it's just a one MRI machine place, and it's actually, the way they have it set up, it's actually the guy who's running the place was actually convicted, a felony conviction for defrauding doctors just a few months before that. And so he's running the place, and the MRI technician who is injecting me, so forth, he's someone who's just as bad. I mean, who would work for a place like this, right? So, and then they have a doctor who sits upstairs. Supposedly he's supposed to be supervising, but he's not doing any such thing. And he has his own practice upstairs in the same building. And they have another doctor who is in New York who claims to be the director. Well, if you're the director, you should be actually directing, but he's basically just signing his name to it. So it's basically a fraudulent setup. So ultimately, I got really a lousy tech, someone who probably you wouldn't want touching you. So anyway, because what happened is, because of my pre-existing condition, which is I was having, which is the blood flow had trouble getting into the brain. When he went to do the contrast test, the contrast agent, sufficiently did not remain in my hand. Well, that's okay. That's actually considered diagnostic in and of itself, because if the contrast doesn't stay in your head, it proves that you're having difficulty getting blood up to your head, and that kind of explains why you have symptoms of dizziness and numbness in your head. But this guy literally went crazy. I mean, he was supposed to end the test at that point, and he's like playing a video game on my body. So he lies to me. He says that now he's supposed to inject it intravenously in the hand, intravenously in the arm. And actually, he already did that. He injected the authorized dose by the doctor. So so far the doctor is okay. What she prescribed, the authorized dose, he injected it intravenously. And after that, it didn't work out, and the test should have been over. But he's like playing a video game with my body, and so he's trying to get that stuff into my head at any cost. So he lies to me that the vein shut off, when in fact the vein did no such thing, because I have evidence from the CD itself that they made showing the film, which shows that he went ahead and did the first post-contrast sequence. That would mean that there was no problem with the injection, and time-wise everything was okay until then. And then he goes ahead, he comes up with this crazy idea in his head, but he's not telling me about it because it's illegal, because it's not even an issue of standard of care, the usual term used for something done wrong by a doctor. No, this is actually illegal, because what he's doing is he goes ahead and injects into the artery in the back of my left hand. So in addition to that, he attaches an extension line. So he's literally, after he's done the authorized injection, he's doing this complete unauthorized act, which he's pumping not just the contrast, I don't know whatever else he's pumping in, but he's literally pumping it in with an extension line, and he's using such high pressure, because if you understand how it works, is intravenously means it slowly goes up to your heart by the veins, and then the arteries rapidly distribute it throughout the body. But now when you're going directly into the artery, you have to reverse the flow to get it up to the brain. So he's trying to get it up to my brain from my palm, basically, and bypassing the heart and bypassing anything else which was holding it up before. And he's just not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to inject anything into the hand and try to push it all the way into the brain. Sometimes they do inject the artery, but that's usually further up, and then they put in a catheter, and then with the catheter they squirt the contrast higher up. But you're not supposed to just push it like a flood from my hand all the way to my brain. So when he did this, all kinds of terrible things took place to my cardiovascular system. And so the later evidence, what it shows is when he inject, now I still get pain in my hand because when you inject the artery, it's like right next to the nerve, and so it pains. So it's not like injecting a vein. And then when you go further up from my hand into my arm, the ulnar artery is completely shut off. There's no flow from the ulnar artery, and there's no pulse in the ulnar artery. So he blew out an artery, and then when he got it further up, he basically put the pressure so high up into my brain that I had a CT scan from years ago which showed some calcification, little bit calcification in some of the arteries in my brain. But now what he did is he broke off all this calcification, so you have basically a landslide going through, coming down my head, coming down to the heart. You know, from the heart, the blood's supposed to come down to the heart by the large vein. So you have this landslide coming in of debris, and that debris, actually some of it got lodged into my ear, and some of the calcification is even in my lower back. So it kind of broke off and it went into different places. And so the next thing, so what happens is and from the evidence that I saw, there's 1 hour missing. So the test is supposed to take like 35 minutes. If you look at the CD evidence, it shows that it took 2 hours. Not only it took 2 hours, for 1 hour there's no activity. So all indications are that I was unconscious for an hour, meaning he made me unconscious for 1 hour. And not only was I unconscious for an hour, he didn't get any help. And like the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad is sitting right behind the place, and Suburban Hospital's like a few blocks away. But the guy basically gets no help for me. And this is what I remember when I kept remembering him. He's always trying to do like this, like the quick exam to check if the person suffered brain damage. You know, when someone gets a heart attack or a stroke or something, if you think the blood flow to their head was limited, you know, so if the blood flow to the head was shut off, you kind of get them to answer in complete sentences, so forth. So it's not like someone was just asking me if I'm okay and so forth. No, he was asking me to answer in complete sentences. But what I didn't realize then is probably that I was unconscious for a full hour and he didn't get any help for me. And then the later evidence also shows kind of what happened. It shows that on the top part of my chest, because there was this landslide coming down and the large veins were overwhelmed, a whole bunch of collateral veins formed. So you have normally unseen veins on the top of your chest, which basically would look like varicose veins all over the place. So these varicose veins, basically what they do is they take the blood coming down the brain, they're taking it to the arm and then bringing it directly to the heart. So that's not the normal route. And also there is indications that on the large vein, the jugular vein coming down from the neck, they call it jugular vascular distension. So that was caused by this. And I also had a whole bunch of swellings on my face and head, and then also my blood pressure and pulse. Now my pulse was already a little high, but it got really high, and my blood pressure was kind of normal and it got higher. So in the next video I'll tell you what happened when I took this information to my doctor a month later.